right, everybody. Well, y'all know the drill. We're going to be reviewing more cards today, and there was some pretty interesting stuff. So, as usual, we got to get all set up. We got to get our logo and cards. Boom. All right, so this first one, we're calling it Archdemon's Vessel. It is 1 black, 1/1, lifelink, which is cool. But then apparently, if it's played out of the graveyard, you get a 5/5 demon. That seems cool. I don't know the easiest ways to do that right now, but there's quite a few. So maybe it fits in with all types of different reanimator stuff. Maybe there's some cool stuff in historic. But being able to get 5/5s on the cheap with flying are pretty good. So yeah, somebody's going to find a way to use this card. I don't even know what's going on with this, why it gives things trample, because it's just like a cat strutting around. But, it's 2 colorless, 1 green, 2/1. Pride Malkin is a cat, and when it enters the battlefield, you can put a +1/+1 on a creature you control, and creatures you control +1/+1 counters gain trample. The other thing too I would say about this card is that when we looked at some of the other stuff from the last few days, it's very possible that when you're doing the cat dog deck, is that what we're calling it after that crazy cartoon? So the cat dog deck, maybe you are playing a bunch of stuff that puts counters on things, and then the stuff having trample could matter, especially if they're getting to 3/3s, 4/4s. That could be an issue. Or maybe this goes into a mono green list that has the ability to put counters on things or already wants stuff with trample, because there are some mono green decks already playing the trample mechanic. So when it's that type of deck, then maybe it's got a spot. At the very least, it could be a 3-mana 3/2. That's not bad. And the card itself would have trample. So that's kind of neat. And if you're already playing stuff like Ram Through in those types of decks, it just makes your removal better. So this is a fun throwback card. Jarrell, I think we originally saw Jarrell in way back when. I want to say Weatherlight, not Weatherlight, but around that time. And then we got reprinted, I think, in Time Spiral. Now we have this card. So it definitely costs a lot less than the other one, and it's a smaller creature. It's a 1 green, 1 colorless for Jarrell Monvoile Recluse. When you draw a card, this is also Human Druid, but when you draw a card, draw your second card each turn, create a 2/2 green cat creature token. You can pay 6, 4 green green. Until end of turn, creatures you control that or have a base power and toughness XX, where X is the number of cards in your hand. So this is kind of cool. It can go into some neat, different blue-green draw spell type decks. You can play it even with that new crazy Eternal Gargaroth, that type of thing where you're getting extra cards in hand, creating multiple tokens. And it is a cool, just little, fairly aggressive sized creature. It's a 2-mana 1/2. You can do some things with that. Not sure if it has an immediate home in Standard. Again, we have to see more cards or even see what comes out in Zendikar in the fall. So very interesting, just kind of cool throwback thing when you start looking at different characters being brought back for core sets. So this one's pretty cool. Yeah, so this one we don't really have a good translation. We're calling it Storm's Wings Presence. It's a 3-mana, 3 colorless 2/2. It's a creature elemental. Costs 2 colorless and a blue less if you cast an instant or sorcery that turn, has flying, prowess, and when it comes into play, scries 2. It's a 3/3. That's a lot of words. Basically means if you have cheap spells you can play, you're ultimately going to be reducing it by 2, not 3, because even if you play an opt, the opt costs you 1, and then you're still going to have to pay the rest of the cost. So it'd be interesting to see where it fits. We do have some spells where that works. Maybe this finds a home in even older formats where you have a bunch of cheap things to play in one turn. Who knows? There's an interesting opportunity there, because technically, well, no, that doesn't really work that way. Interesting. Yeah, it's always just going to cost 3 less. That's the best you can do. So yeah, I don't know. I'm sure there's a home somewhere for this list. Maybe it fits in the mono blue flash decks or counter decks. Maybe it's blue-green, Simic, something. But it could be interesting, and it's a sizable body. I wouldn't turn my nose up at it all, especially with prowess. Idol of Endurance is a very interesting one. For 2 colorless and a white, you get an artifact. It is a rare, but when it enters the battlefield, exile all creature cards with converted mana cost 3 or less from your graveyard until the idol leaves play. And then you can pay 1 colorless and a white, tap it, and then until end of turn, you can cast creature from your graveyard among the cards that were exiled with the idol. So this is kind of interesting, right? Do decks that have been playing Lurrus look at something like this? That maybe your Lurrus gets killed, you're like, okay, this is your backup plan, right? You just pay 2, now you have access to all this stuff till end of turn. Especially if all your stuff costs 1 and 2, maybe you can cast 2 or 3 things out of the graveyard. And it looks like it doesn't restrict you from playing those cards, kind of like Lurrus only lets you play 1 a turn. Now granted, once they're out of the graveyard, they don't go back and go under the idol, so that's a little bit different. But it's an interesting idea to think about, and we haven't even seen the rest of the set yet, so maybe there's more cards that fit into the strategy. You know, sometimes cards just entertain you, right? So this is Volcanic Salvo. It is 10 RR. That is correct, 12 mana, which sounds crazy. But again, remember when we saw it on a big dinosaur, we thought that was crazy too. But it gets lower cost, so it's going to cost X less, equal to the total power of creatures you control. So you can get this down reasonably to like a 6, you know, maybe even a little less, but then it deals 6 damage to up to 2 targets, creatures or planeswalkers of your choice. So you do get to remove 2 big things. This feels more like a great finisher type card to clear the board in limited. Don't know if it really has a home in standard. If it were able to let me hit players, I think it would be huge. But since it doesn't, not really sure where you're going to find room for it. But it is a sorcery as well, so, you know, I'm not sure this is really going to have a home. Now, just for clarity's sake, the temples got reprinted. Wanted to show those. They're all the enemy colors, it looks like. So this does mean that we're going to have all 10 temples available for the next year in standard. They'll all rotate again come the following fall, following the next core set. So we'll have them for at least, 15 months or so still. So that's kind of a good thing. I know some people would rather have seen some other lands in the rare slot, but it's also possible because Zendikar has always been based around something to do with lands. There's going to be some new land cycle in there as well. So I say just wait and see and enjoy these temples in the meantime. Yeah, also because we can, just courtesy shot of a sweet looking mountain. I mean, that frame's pretty awesome on a land. Not a lot to say about this one, but you know, if you spent money or I guess wildcards getting your fabled passages, congrats. They're gonna be standard legal for another year longer. Okay, now here's a card we can talk about. Like, it was already starting to get up there in price a little bit on the secondary market. It was already becoming almost ubiquitous. If you're playing green and Commander, you play this to try to protect your cards. It was even making some spot appearances in 60 card formats. So this is a good reprint to have around. It keeps the price of the card down, makes it accessible to everybody, and you now have green decks that are not going to be so afraid of losing to something like Shatter the Sky or whatever. Now, granted, how many of these you play, whether it's 2 main, 2 on the board, all 4 main deck, who knows? But definitely going to be playing some of this card. If you don't have any, now's a good time to start trying to trade for some if you have the ability to trade in the current state of things. If not, keep your eye out on this. This card's definitely going to be worth having some. This is a card we haven't seen in a while. This is another quality reprint. You know, when you're looking at spot removal and how stuff's going to rotate and what people are going to have access to, this one's really good. And honestly, being the Gruul player, this card's a little bit scary to have floating around. Getting rid of a 4 toughness thing is going to make life a little difficult because that gets rid of almost everything that the creature decks play. So you can definitely expect to see this card played quite a bit in the near future. I mean, it's just 2 black. I mean, instant kill a thing. You pretty much get to do whatever you want to do with it. It's really good. So it's going to be a card you're always going to have to keep in mind whenever you're attacking, trying to do combat math when your opponent has creatures. They can kill one of your big things, chump blocking and using this. So yeah, this card's going to add some complications for creatures for sure. And then this is kind of fitting. We're starting this video and ending this video with things that care about the graveyard. How convenient. I'm terrible at that. It's an old Saturday Night Live thing. Feel free to look it up. Anyway, this is a 3 mana, so it's colorless blue-black, 0/3. Obsessive Stitcher is a creature, human, wizard. Tap it, draw a card, then discard a card. So, you know, standard loot effect. But then you can pay 2 colorless, blue, black, tap it, sacrifice Obsessive Stitcher, return target creature from your graveyard to the battlefield. So remember we were talking about how you're going to be able to get that little 1/1 lifelinker back into play and get that demon? Well, here's one way you can do it, actually. You can sacrifice your 0/3 and get a 5/5. But the crazy thing is, it doesn't even have to be that. There's bigger stuff you can get. You know, we've been talking about what are some ways that we could play like Dracoseth and some of these other big creatures. Well, now there's a way to just directly put it into play. Granted, at best, it's a turn 4 thing, so you'd have to have some way on turn 2 most likely to get stuff into the yard. Play this on 3, have tap it and use the ability on 4. But maybe it's not a turn 4 thing. Maybe it's turn 5 or turn 6. But it's definitely a card that's going to add some different dimension to a few different decks. And since there's a couple of things talking about the graveyard, I expect we'll see several more commons and uncommons that fill in that gap a little bit. Okay, well, all told, today wasn't that bad, card-wise. We didn't have to rush too much. I expect tomorrow's going to be a bit of a doozy. Also, look for Gavin Verhey's weekly video now, I guess he's doing. I'm going to be on there with him on Wednesday, where we're going to be talking about some of the new art and some history between some of the legends that appear in core set 21. I believe it's called Good Morning Magic, so keep an eye out for that as well. As always, feel free to like this video, and by feel free, I'm meaning beg you to like this video and hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so you'll get reminded every time we have a preview video up, because I'm trying to do them every day through the preview season to keep you up to date on the cards that are coming out. So please come back and see me again. That's all I have for today. We will see you next time.